Date with a Debut is a Words and Nerds and Breathe Art podcasts co-production recorded on Awabakal Country. And I pay my respects to all elders, past and present, and extend that to any First Nations people tuning in. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. On with the show. Welcome to Date with a Debut, a podcast about debut authors, their incredible books, and their journey to publication. If you are looking for a new author to discover or writing inspiration for your own story and you don't know where to start, this is the place to be. I'm Nick Wasiliev, author of When Men Cry and your host for today's show, and I'm delighted to welcome another debut author in today's episode. If you enjoy the show, or indeed any other shows on the Words and Nerds platform, jump online and give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review, wherever you are listening. Thank you for listening to us and for supporting the Australian book industry. You can also find any books mentioned in today's podcast down in the description. Today, I'm joined by Steph Tisdell, a proud Yindiji woman, actor, comedian. She's been in shows such as Class of '07, Total Control, Bump, and Netflix original Love is in the Air. But we're here today to talk about her debut novel, The Skin I'm In, published by Pan Macmillan, which you can get a copy of right now in the description. I started off by asking Steph about her incredible career up until this point, and why writing a novel was, in her words, the most vulnerable thing she's ever done. Steph, welcome to Date with a Debut.
Thank you so much. I am here in Meanjin, Brisbane, on the lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people, especially where I am, it's the Yagara people, and it's good to join you.
Thank you so much. It is a privilege to talk to you, and also congratulations. I've had this.
It's still so weird every time I see it. It's so weird.
Look at it. Maintain eye contact. This is your baby.
Oh my God, I'm so scared.
Does it feel weird?
I'm shitting myself. Can I swear?
Absolutely, you can swear.
Yeah. It feels real weird and it's really scary. Are you a writer?
Certainly am. Yep, know the feeling. I'm completely. Yeah. It is like it goes off and has a life of its own. Your book, and it's weird and it's so strange.
And people won't know why I chose certain things, and I know which bits got edited out and which bits got kept in, and which, like, you get like really stuck on like a word. I had this word that I was like, no, you don't understand. My character would say this word, and in every edit they were like, you use this a lot, and I was like, but she would. This is the only thing that she knows how to describe this. And so if people notice it and go, oh, it's not very creative, all I'm going to be thinking is, you don't understand.
It's the language. I totally get it, because you're speaking the language of how people speak to each other in that environment.
Yes.
So many people, because my book was like situated on a bunch of blokes. Yeah. And like blokes swear all the time. Like they drop the F-bomb and the C-bomb and all of that shit. And so many people have been like, I don't like this book because the language is quite graphic. I'm like, this is just how guys speak. It's just
same with mine's a teenager, and I was like, teenagers swear more than anybody I've ever met.
Yeah.
Because teenagers are like, fuck, this is a new word. I'm going to use it all the time.
Yeah, and saying fuck is really satisfying. Exactly.
Exactly.
Anyway, before we dive into this book, I could get sidetracked all day. But like you've been on an insane run lately. I mean, you just did the NAIDOC. We're involved with NAIDOC a few weeks ago at the time of us recording. Bump has been everywhere. You've been writing Fisk. You've had a Netflix original, blossoming comedy career. Now you are a writer. Taking care of business.
It's a bit weird, isn't it? I've been whoring myself around a bit. Somebody was like, oh, wow, you're such a you must be so busy all the time. I'm like, I'm not. I'm just really fast, and also don't want to sit with my thoughts for too long. I'd much prefer to be doing something. This isn't the sign of a successful, healthy person. It's the sign of a very sad little woman.
Well, whatever you're on, can I have some of that? Because I wish
Yeah,
I could
man.
pick up on some of that shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it's
funny.
just lack of dopamine. That's all.
That's the truth of it. Too harsh. I kind of find it funny because before we actually dive into talking about these amazing characters and this amazing world that you've got, you describe this book as being the single most vulnerable feeling or thing that you've ever done. Why was prose the right medium to tell this particular story that you had?
I think the thing that I've always struggled with is everything that I've ever done in my career has been about being an advocate and making a difference for my people. And I think what's been really hard as a public person is to reconcile all of the nuance of it. I think that it's public perception that puts you in a little box. And for me, that's been Indigenous comedian Steph, Indigenous actress Steph. And of course I'm Indigenous, but as part of my day-to-day, it's not the only thing that is on my mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
but when
no,
it comes to my career and my advocacy, it's kind of not only do you wear what it means to want to advocate for your people, but the perceptions that people have on you. And so you can lose nuance. You know, you're kind of expected to be an expert. You're expected to be the holder and knower of all cultural knowledge. And that's just not my experience. I grew up away from country and actually had a lot of shame and felt quite self-conscious about the fact that I didn't know the things that I wish that I'd known. And that's been very hard to kind of explain that to people. And I kind of call it diversity within diversity, in that understanding that blackfellas are so diverse. We're all individual, we're all unique. And to, you know, be at the kind of under the thumb of perceptions created and, you know, perpetuated by media is really hard. And so a book where I'm in the mind of a, you know, 17-year-old girl going through high school, figuring herself out, feels so vulnerable and allows for nuance and allows for the self-indulgence that we don't often afford ourselves as adults. And that's why it feels vulnerable, because I know that the story isn't true, but the feelings are. And the self-indulgence is it was such a privilege to lean into that.
Suddenly so much shit makes sense because like when I was reading through the book, I kind of picked up on a lot of these feelings of trying to connect to that, but also finding yourself as a person very much so was one of the key things that came through, and that there are many facets and experiences that you have. So like now I get it. It makes a lot more sense now. We're at the part of the pod where I kind of like to hit our guests with a 1-minute pitch to talk about what this book is. So now I am going to throw that at you. What is The Skin I'm In about?
The Skin I'm In is about a young girl called Layla trying to find herself in the world when she loses the privilege of seeing people as one-dimensional and herself as one-dimensional. And when she starts to reconcile the world at large as it comes, you know, smashing into her personal world and her personal identity, I guess. About being
nailed
black.
it. Nailed it.
Yeah.
Stuck the landing. Got it. Easy as. So we'll try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible because I want people to actually go and read the book. But I'll try and touch on.
Did you like it?
I loved it. I love No, I love the YA genre just in general. It's one of the best genres to dissect because I think it's one of the best genres at examining, educating. It can be playful, it can be nuanced, it can be sophisticated, but a lot of good YA treats its audience, the best YA really treats its audience with love and respect. And I think that you've got the audience here, but like there's a lot of heavy shit.
Oh, fucking oath, yeah.
You tackle some big issues here, and you know the big one that we kind of alluded to a little bit earlier was that we've got us through this lens of Layla, because she's straddling so many worlds at a time that
Exactly.
she's kind of growing up. There's the world of connecting to country and First Nations that she's working with. She's got to deal with the environment of school, which, fuck me, that's hard enough as it is as well.
Yeah.
And then there's self-identity. Oh, and there's a boy. There's a boy. Just first of all, because I feel like the best way to lean into this book is to first of all understand Layla herself. Tell me a little bit about her, because to understand this book, you have to understand her.
I think if I'm really honest, right, I think that what's funny is it's fictional, right? But the characters are aspirational. So they're based on people, but not. Do you know what I mean? I think that Layla is both the best and worst parts of me, as I was at that age.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, she is she's got the frustration that I look back at myself with, where she kind of thinks she's a lot more grown up than she is. And I think that's really relatable, and kind of I always thought that I was so much more world weary than I really was, or something, like this real like collision of like being really empathetic and really self-aware, but also really just self-indulgent is what she is. But she's also very smart and very kind and very funny. And what I love about Layla that I want to be like her is that she is absolutely courageous in a way that I wish I could have been. And a lot, this is funny because she's a very self-conscious character, but less self-conscious than I was at that age. Yeah. So Layla is, if I could sum her up, she's quick-witted, smart, anxious, but really fucking knows who she is.
That's right. Like, I think this is going to be a good compliment that I know will just make you go, yes, you nailed her voice, which makes it like so believable. Earn that fist bump. You should be so proud of that, because like she's in that stage where she has been handed a lot of heavy shit in her life already from a young age. And on one level, she's kind of starting to reach that point in your life where you start to kind of get an understanding of that.
Yes.
Where, like, that is different to when you're kids from a younger age, and when stuff like that happens to you, you can't quite process it or don't understand it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's still a kid. Like, she's still a child. She's got the responsibility, and so that is still she's kind of also straddling that, because you play off those contrasts as well, because she's got the responsibilities of, trying to connect to her nation and also her family environment. There's her cousin Marley who kind of enters the frame. Everything. Yeah, and Marley's had plenty of troubles of her own, and obviously there's the situation with her mother. I love some of the stories that like her mother talks about, like the story about the gold rush, like just one little pardon the pun nugget that kind of stuck out to me, for example. And that household environment, and then you contrast it with the school environment. You got Amy, as well, her own self-discovery, and then of course there's Tim, as well.
Angie, who's the best. That is totally an aspirational character. Everything I wish I was in the world is Angie.
You got to have one of them in one of these stories. You need a character who's like, I want to be like that. Like, let's bring this person into existence. First of all, like, tell me about these characters, all of them a little bit, but also how they fitted into all of these different elements and areas that Layla is kind of in conflict with. I know that's a really complicated question, but
no, my answer is going to be really strange, and I think you'll understand. And I presume that a lot of people who listen to this are readers and writers, so I wonder if this will hit home with a few. But the reality is that I don't know. And the reason why I don't know is, to give you an insight, it took me 6 months to write the first 30,000 words of this. And then it took me 6 hours to write the next 30,000. And it was because, and I'm not exaggerating, like literally I stayed up one night and just wrote until I, and it was because once I got rid of the idea of planning it all out, because I don't know how to do that. It's not who I am as a person. So once I let go of this idea of what a perfectly formed character would sound like if I was writing it out as a bio, and once I got rid of the idea of what happens next and then what, I could actually just discover it with the characters. And actually, Angie was a huge part of that, because Angie wrote herself into the book. She was never in any of the plans or discussions at any point. And Tim as well. Angie and Tim wrote themselves into the story because they were so perfectly able to bring things out in Layla that told the themes and messaging. And because in a lot of ways it's my story without being my story, which is what I think we do as writers, having these characters that were perfect conduits for discussion or reflection within Layla, I don't know, they just came and wrote themselves in, you know? And then I got used to understanding that the way that I operated was I needed 6 months to get something done, which was 6 months of me procrastinating, thinking about it, discussing it with other people, and then 8 hours to write.
Yep, that's literally how it works. When it flows, it flows. And I'm not surprised to hear that the first like half of the book was like 6 months, and then the rest of it just goes like that, because suddenly everything clicks into place and everything works. And that's
interesting. Interesting thing that you said, like on The Voice, something that my publisher said, or my editor said to me, was, she said, this is a very interesting process for us. She said, because what we find usually is that, one, like I was a bit backwards, because one, usually people, the start of their book is the strongest. They've done the most thinking about it. They've worked the hardest on it. Two, they know exactly what's going to happen. The story is perfect. And then they don't know how to get their voice, you know. And then three is sticking to voice. And they were like, for some reason, your voice is perfect, structure, need a lot of help. And the second half is way stronger than the first half. And so it was like, it was just a bit backwards. And so they were kind of like, this is quite interesting. But I guess it's an insight into how my brain works. All that I cared about was the themes and the messaging, and the story was just a side note to show nuances that are hard to fucking show unless you've got something to attach them to that compels people to listen.
And well, look, you definitely get people to listen, and kind of to extend their compliments and what I said earlier, like, it's good when you have a good voice to communicate it through. And I mean, I loved being with Layla.
Oh, thank you. That's really
when
good
I was
to know.
reading with and I'm not surprised at all that Ange and Tim kind of entered the fray the way they did, because they bring a lot of great discussion, conflict, and a lot of good, as well as many challenges out of Layla, and also just, I mean, it's cute seeing Tim, and it was like that fed into it so well. But again, as you allude to, there's obviously a lot of other stuff, really heavy stuff in this book, and there's also a good cultural identity conversation, because, you know, a lot of young First Nations kids, on top of growing up and also coming to terms with their own identity, there is that another pressure. It's like of a conflicted time. They live in a world where others think they have a say in what they should be doing, or what they could be doing, or how they should present themselves and put themselves in a box. And I do also feel like that kind of came out as something that you were kind of on a mission to address a little bit as well, with those themes and parts of the book.
Definitely. I think Marley was a really good and difficult character for me, and a good way to show those elements, in that, you know, because I grew up away from country, I always had this fear of whether, I don't know, just of how I would be taken, or how I would, you know, be perceived or whatever. And that was just my fear based on absolutely nothing. And I recognize that. But I also know that it's not just my experience. It's a fear that a lot of blackfellas have, who are metro blackfellas, is that, you know, your identity is somehow undermined by growing up kind of knowing how to speak like the oppressor almost. You know what I mean? Like there's something quite confronting about that. And so Marley, who is the absolute opposite, where he's grown up in a world where he grows up with all black fellas, he absolutely has this sort of I guess conflict with the oppressor, you know, in this setting or whatever. That was kind of to show just how vastly different those the you know these sides of this are, but then it's more nuanced than that again. I don't even know if I've just answered your question, but Marley was like I even wrote Marley specifically. Like I never got to, as a writer, I never got to know Marley because I do not believe that Layla would ever get to know Marley. And that's kind of a huge part of his story, is that he is closed off. There's not much to mine for her. And so it's her piecing everything together herself. Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. Yeah.
Even in the editing, they're like, oh, you know, we should do more or show more of Marley. And I said, but it's not believable to this experience. It's just not. She's not interacting with him because he doesn't want to be interacted with. And in fact, the whole point of this is how easily we will just think that somebody's a bit of a fuckwit because we don't take into account their context. And that's what he has to be to me. She can't see that there is more going on until she has to see it because everything happens. And so the less we know of him, the better, you know, where it's her discovery and it's sort of showing the reader that work needs to be done within yourself a lot of the time.
Yeah. They're within that as well. And it's good you mentioned that because it's not just all the other stuff going on, but there's also the
sorry, my birds are talking in the background.
Nah, it's cool. I find it. I'm fully aware of Parky and Eddie, so I'm quite. I'm so no, they can squawk away. It's fun. I love that as well. There's the nuance in there of that. I think a lot of people, particularly from a non-Indigenous background, need to that is good to understand is that there is a lot of conflict within that community as well, and a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication, and there's that's a key part to understand. That is so valuable. As a kind of a last question on the actual book itself, because long and the short of it, we want folks to go and read it because I don't want to give away no spoilers. I don't want any spoilers on the ending. But there's always the usual cliche of what do you want readers to get out of the book, and I always respond with, "Well, go read the book and find out for yourself." My question instead then is, what did this book teach you? What did writing it teach you?
It showed me all of the things that I wished that I'd had, the insights that I wished that I'd had, the ways that I wished that I'd been seen. I don't know if dreaming camp is a real thing or it exists, but fuck, I could have used it as a kid. It made me realize how much I struggled with this, that if I had somebody to talk to at that age or felt like it was okay to understand there is so many different types of black fellas and that diversity within that diversity, I would have been more proud of myself and settled as a person because there are a million different ways that colonization shows itself in everyday life for a black fella, and it all comes from the same initial cut, but the media shows just a very, very one-dimensional view of what it means to be black in this country. And it just taught me that there are so many different experiences. I don't know. It showed me what I wished I was and what I wished I had, I think. And I think I had to learn about, what young people do these days. Like I had to think about, it gave me a lot of hope because I recognized that people these days are in a very different world than I was. And I don't think that people are going to get bullied in quite the same, well, not bullied, but I think that people in general are doing a bit of a better job now than I did. And I had to write with that in mind. And that was hard as well to soften what my experience was. Yeah.
It's a killer book. You should be super proud of it.
Thank you. I want to ask you one quick question because this to me will build anticipation for the reader.
Yes.
It has a twist ending, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's a happy ending or not?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because I've had really different responses to that.
That is a good question. Oh, so, like, okay, I'm going to try and say this without being too specific.
Yeah.
Like there's mixed endings and endings that are like melancholy, kind of a melancholy feel to it. I personally dig those. I really like the ending, and
because I don't think it's a happy ending, but I don't necessarily know if it's a sad ending.
No, it's I like those mixed endings because I think it's an accurate tying things up with a bow. Is not necessary. I mean, sometimes you get that in life, but let's be honest, most times you don't.
Yeah.
And I think it's a more accurate reflection of the human experience or the universal experience.
Yeah.
So I dig that. I digged it, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and but I will say that I think it's complimentary, considering the story and considering what you're trying to communicate.
It's totally unresolved, and I like that.
Yes.
Because people have to talk about what does happen next, and they have to use every bit of knowledge that they've learned through the book to decide. And they can be hopeful or cynical, and either way, they've got a little bit more information to, So that was very intentional, and I want to make sure that people know that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I loved it. It was a great ending. So, but it's each my own taste. I'll quickly touch on just a little bit of your writing experience, if I can, because you've obviously written in a hell of a lot of places. You've written drama, comedy, you've done live audience, television. How did writing a book compare to that experience?
It was so hard, so bloody hard. Like,
that is so nice to know.
Oh my big issue is I have no idea how to deal with structure. Structure is not something that I do. I get by in my life in being totally unprepared, and that is my brand. And I have sold that as my brand. That is exactly who I am. Most things that I do are improv. When I'm writing, I'm in writers' rooms. I'm not writing screenplay. Like I've got ideas coming out the wazoo. I've got a good understanding of character, and then how the fuck do you keep it moving? And that's what I really struggled with. For example, to give a good, a simple example of what I found the writing process like, I bucked and screamed and got frustrated because I had this one scene, it got cut in the end, and so it should have. I fought to keep this one chapter that made no sense to stay in the book. And I realized afterwards why I did it right. So it was a scene where Layla was sitting on a bus looking at everybody on the bus and pondering where they were going, where they'd been, why they wear the shoes that they wear. There's like a page description about this girl that she's looking at and how her regrowth is growing out and how her shoes are, she reckons she got them from blah, blah, blah. And it was like so randomly meandering and just so many pages of nothing to do with story. But I loved them. It was my favorite part to write. And the editor's going, I get it, Steph. It's good writing. I know why you like it, but this is not necessary. We have to take this out. And I was so frustrated. But it was because I loved writing it because it was the most exploratory. That was when I got to know Layla inside out.
Yeah, I can understand why you would have fought for it because it was very much like a growth in character, which would have been a lot more difficult to kind of let go of because it felt intricate to
but actually,
who you are.
Yeah, but it had nothing to do with the story, literally nothing. It was just about me understanding the psychology of my protagonist. And I wish that I'd done that right as my very first thing that I ever did was just write somebody sitting on a bus and processing different things because there's so much different stimulus and what they choose to focus on says a lot about the character. And that to me was the best experience of writing the book and really the only part that I remember writing.
I'm going to steal that off you, to be 100% honest. I'm going to steal that off you for because I'm writing my next 2 books at the moment. So I'm going to steal that off you and then do that as an exercise. That's a good idea.
It's even something that I do as an actor. Often when I do an audition, I will do and I don't always submit it, but I'll often do like what sort of, imagine if they did like a Facebook quiz, like if it's somebody who I think is a bit socially out of touch, they found a Facebook quiz or, Facebook challenge where it's like, tell your 15-year-old self what you wish they knew. Like I always do stuff like that, and it'll be me doing a selfie going, all right, well, I guess but in character, and I have to find the character within that, and that becomes what I build my entire character off, is them doing something cheesy and silly for socials.
Love it. So literally after this interview, you're going straight off to get headshots and look fantastic and glamorous.
Obviously.
Already. Yeah. But after that, what's next for you? Has this book galvanized a potential to write another one?
Writing. Yeah, 100%. I reckon. Yeah, without a doubt. But it will have nothing to do with, it will be sci-fi, I reckon.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, sci-fi or thriller.
Love it.
That's what I want to write.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm not going to lie. I've actually been diving my fun genre discovery this year, courtesy of Michaela Saunders and John Morrissey, two authors who I've had on the show earlier this year. Indigenous futurism. So like sci-fi stories told through a First Nations lens. Phenomenal. I cannot get enough. It's so good. You should honestly get into it. So their books are always will be, it's a short story anthology collection, both of them. John's is called Firelight, and Michaela's is Always Will Be. And mate, get on it. They're so good.
Yes, that sounds amazing. I just love anything that fucks with psychology.
Oh yeah, that'd be so cool.
He's me. He's literally standing on his head. My bird is standing on the other bird's head.
Well, we'll dive into the last part of the pod, which is a rapid fire question part of this discussion. Where I literally fling a bunch of questions at you, and you give me the first answer that comes to your head.
Done.
First up, what is your favorite book that you have read in the last 12 months?
It's not in the last 12 months.
That's okay.
The most recent favorite book is The Humans by what's his face? Can't remember the name now. Matt Haig.
Oh yeah. I know it. Yep. That's the one. Oh, he's good. He's a really good author. I like him. Do you have a debut, like a first ever book that you've ever read and you've gone, holy shit, that person is phenomenal, and that's how they started their writing career?
Oh no, I don't know. I'm so sorry.
That's cool. You're right. It could be actually. We could expand it out of books and say, was there like a piece of television or something that you first watched that was someone's first attempt at it and it was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Iwani on Bump, who plays Vince. The first time I ever saw him in the first season, I went, "This is one of the most talented actors." I think he's got his whole career ahead of him. And he's a beautiful person.
Aw. Actors are the best. Actors, I feel like actors and writers. I actually feel like actors and writers, there's a lot of crossover in terms of how they just interact with people. I think they're the most interesting people to speak to.
Actors. I used to think they were going to be wankers, but I actually quite like actors. Writers are great. Yes, writers are. It's because we're all fucking introspective and weird. Spend too long looking inwards.
Yeah, we literally spend so much time all by our fucking selves in a room writing shit, and then then when we come and actually hang out with other people who get it, you just let loose.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite word?
Yes, I do. I'm just trying to think. Do you know what's a word that I really like the look of and just the feeling of? Vulgar. It feels like it is vulgar.
It's visceral. You can feel
very visceral.
Yeah.
Also like the word visceral.
That's a good. Anything with V. V is a good word. Yeah. Just anything starting with V usually pretty good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
That's a great word. That's a really good word. I like that.
Yeah.
How important are your Parrots, Parky, and Eddie to you as writing companions?
10 out of 10, the most important.
Love it.
Literally the most important. Because it's very lonely, and then I'll put on music and they'll be singing in the background, and I love that. And it's kind of also reminds me to not get too lost because I have to feed them and put them to bed and take care of them. And I think I can lose myself in things really easily. They're a really good grounding force for me.
Oh, love it. Yeah. They say that there are many rules in comedy. If that is the case, do you have a particular favourite?
There's one that they don't usually talk about. The number one thing is love your audience. Love them. Make them feel loved.
Yeah.
And I even feel like that in writing. Like, Layla's an affectionate person. But, like, just in terms of how she approaches the world, I want people to feel warmth. Just give warmth wherever you can.
That's a good one. I like that. Because it brings it back to the whole reason why you're all there in the first place, which is to have fun.
Exactly.
And find enjoyment. Oh, love it. Layla manifests herself as a real life person, and you get to hang out with her for a day. What do you do?
Mm-hmm. I'll give her the biggest fucking hug. Number one.
Yes.
I lecture her about smoking, and I ask her what she really wants to do with her life.
Oh, nice. Go philosophical with it. I like it.
Yeah, I'd just have a really deep conversation for sure.
D&M. I love it.
Yeah.
Last question. Are you happy?
No. Are you?
Occasionally. It kind of moves back and forth. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. I kind of have decided that letting yourself flow and being honest is more important.
Yeah.
If you feel like shit, own it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm up and down. I have the hugest capacity for joy and also a huge capacity for the depths. Like, I think as a creative and as a very emotional person, my highs are high, my lows are low. And so as a general rule, it's hard to know if I'm happy because I'm always ecstatically happy in moments, in bursts. And I think the other side of that is harder and longer and takes more work. I can very easily be happy and I can very easily be sad. And so I'm not happy there. You know what I mean? That means I'm not that happy.
Yeah, I know. I totally get what you mean. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But I am happy today because I got to chat to you, which was super, super fun.
Hey!
Yeah, I know. That was smooth, eh?
It was smooth.
Steph, it has been an absolute pleasure. I could honestly chat to you all day, but I know you've got people to see and places to be. So I'll simply say thank you so much. At the time of recording, The Skin I'm In is about to come out, but by the time you're listening to this, it's out now. So go and grab a copy of it. You won't regret it.
Do it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Date with a Debut and for listening to the Words and Nerds channel. You can buy all books mentioned in today's episode down in the description box, and if you enjoyed the show or indeed any episode of Words and Nerds, drop us a review, leave us 5 stars or a thumbs up. It is hugely appreciated. Catch you soon.